All right, so over the past few years, I have spent a lot of my time working with people relocating to the state of Florida. And I've seen, because of that, firsthand, what they're drawn to, what surprises them, and where their plans generally shift once they actually take a visit. It's like a big YouTube science experiment of some sort, and that's some of the beauty of it is the feedback loop. Along the way, I've realized there's probably a few things I overassumed. Some of it has to do with which cities people actually choose, and some of it is the market itself, what sellers are doing, how buyers are acting, and which areas are evolving in unexpected ways. In today's video, I would like to share a few assumptions that I had previously that maybe didn't quite hold up the way that I thought it was going to. I hope you enjoy the take. If we have not met, my name is Adam Hancock. If me and my team can assist you in any way with your real estate needs, please consider reaching out. And without further ado, let's hop in. All right, number one, and we'll go no particular order here again, is the idea that I thought that more people would move to more areas throughout the state of Florida. You know, because when you look at relocating, and if you're going through this at all, it's convoluted to say the least, but you have, like, if you just say major metros, I mean, you have all of Southwest Florida, like Sarasota, Tampa, beyond. You have Orlando and Central Florida and all of that, the Villages, Lakeland, all of that area. Panhandle, you have St. Augustine, St. Johns County, Ponte Vedra, Nocatee, you see that, all that ranks really high for schools and golf and all kinds of stuff. And then Port St. Lucie, Melbourne, it feels like you have a ton of options. And then the way data's tracked, if you're trying to guess, like, I would like to know where everybody else is going too, because you would assume that not everybody's going to be wrong. So whenever I'm trying to make any decision, I like that data point. So if you try to look at migration patterns or any of that, just the way census data is updated, it's not in real time. And then you also have blips like COVID where it like skews all the numbers. And then you look at rankings and some do percentage, some do total volume. So you have different size cities being compared, apples to oranges. Just no way to get that kind of information. What's really interesting about my organization, which was an accident, the way it was created, but is all of our data is very unique in that it's 100% internet-based out-of-state relocation. So everyone I'm talking to may be coming from the same 5-6 different states or like Canadian province or areas of Canada, but they're coming to one state to try to search. But they share a similar thread, is that they start pretty macro because they're not like looking at a development as much as they're saying, what part of the state do I want to end up in? And if you've gone through this at all and you go to a state and you haven't even heard of half these names, like, it's so hard to get your head around where do I even start? So because of that, a lot of our folks start up here and they're super smart about it because by the time they get here, they know so much information. And they're basically just trying to say, like, big road trip of where do I like bump everything against something? So they're not necessarily ignorant of the choices that they did not make because they did look at them. But in my experience, especially the last like 24 months, they're all doing the same thing. They're looking at 5 or 6 places to choose one, and they're choosing the same one. They're choosing the Sarasota greater area. I'm not just saying that because that's my home base, but Sarasota, Manatee County is the absolute belle of the ball. If you go Southwest Florida and like Tampa's a little too big, you would think you got 3 considerable options. You would think you could choose Southwest Florida and say, oh yeah, I got all of Tampa Bay, 3 counties. I got the 2 major counties of Sarasota's general area, and I also have Lee and Collier County and Charlotte in between with the Naples-Fort Myers area. You say Tampa's like, I don't need a city, I don't need all of that. Then people aren't evenly looking at Sarasota and Naples. Like, it's getting hard to argue why you would choose Lee or Collier County if you could choose any part of Sarasota or Manatee County. And people take a peek at like St. Johns County, say you have a family and you're like Sarasota County, St. Johns County, and parts of Orlando are ranked like the top 3 districts in the state when it comes to public schools. But then they're like Northeast, it's almost like in Georgia, there's not as much new construction. You have a beach town next to one of the largest cities in the contiguous United States. The central Atlantic coast is very random. The reason there's a lot of affordability is there's all these random like coastal towns that are cool, interesting in their own outright, but randomness of it doesn't feel as consolidated. People are like, oh, I like the Gulf Coast beaches maybe a little better. Miami's a peacock, the Panhandle's a peacock. And they say like, okay, well, Southwest Florida, if I had to like pick one place, like central proximity, it's a nice home base. And then Sarasota sits in the middle where you have Tampa access and Naples, but you can live in Sarasota in between them. You're like 3.5 hours, almost everything that you want to be or under, except for the Panhandle. Hurricane-wise, knock on everything besides the last couple of years, had a really long history of not having like crazy major damage against the other parts of the state because of like where it's based. And then the density of new construction master plan developments for an area that is so small is insane per capita. So you take all of that And it's just such an interesting trend. The reason that I feel so confident in saying these kind of things is because I'm not really guessing on what I think based on talking to people. I'm just testing something here and I'm seeing what everyone does. And they're all doing one thing. And I think what my feeling on it is ahead of where any updates meaningfully are going to be in public data in the market, in my opinion. And so what I think is going to shake out to kind of end this thought exercise for number one is that I think as we continue on here the next like 5 years or so, everyone is going to to look at a bunch of other places and they're going to shove their way into one or two metros in the entire state of Florida. And it's going to make that a unicorn premium anomaly that's against a lot of conventional wisdom of what the market is in every other place that exists in the country because of scarcity and supply and demand relationships. And it's going to slowly water down the other areas when it comes to relocation across the state of Florida, affecting those in ways that they haven't been affected in the past because of the major trend of net migration. Point number two is one thing I really thought would happen this year, and honestly, I think a lot of buyers expected the same thing, was that with inventory rising, we're seeing homes sitting longer. We went 0 to 1 months on market for years during like the hot time to like borderline we're going into like a buyer's market that I don't think anyone predicted that much leverage. I thought we'd start to see home sellers get more flexible, like give more, be more pliable in general. The frenzy's over. The rates are high, demand's clearly softer. It felt logical to me. What would start to happen is negotiation. Sellers would get way more aggressive, or at least price the homes a little closer to what I would personally deem reality. But that's not what's happened. At least it's not happened consistently. And what I've seen instead is a lot of sellers holding out for unrealistic prices. In some cases, they're anchored to what like the neighbor sold in 2022. And that's a real hard pill to swallow. You miss that wave. And in others, because that's all our sales history. It was a huge market anomaly, is all of our sales history. And even the trickle of what happened after it is all somewhat related to the 2020 to 2022 term. So if you look at any sales history to like comp your house, it's in a time that hopefully won't happen again in the foreseeable future. But so we're seeing some of that, and we're also seeing just life stuff. We're seeing people needing a number. One of the things that I think is coming in a big way, it feels like, if people can't avoid it, is like some sort of foreclosure pickup activity. I don't know how meaningful. I know there's a lot of ways to negate that these days versus what you could do 10 years ago, but we've spoken to a lot of people. I've spoken to a lot of buddies that are like listing agent heavy, and people are trying to sell houses because they're going to lose them. And in that case, they need a certain number. So you have that, and that's a very unfortunate reality, but it's something that controls a price that maybe it should not be priced in a way, but it's a person issue. And then one of the big ones, which I've been beating that drum for the last few weeks here, is that I thought people would kind of be excited that the inventory picked up. You come to an area like Sarasota, a lot of places you can never live in that now have all these homes available. It lets you learn the town a little better because you could actually use Zillow meaningfully, which you couldn't, when there's no inventory. You don't even know what neighborhoods to look at in a resale-based town. And I thought people would be excited about a little bit of that leverage. They're seeing all those homes available and they're saying, nah, I'm okay. And they're buying new construction. And new constructions continue to expand. So inventory is picking up on resale dynamics, and people aren't not moving. They're just buying the new construction homes instead. So then sellers have to compete with that kind of stuff. And there's really nothing you can do about that. I just think there's not really a takeaway here as much as one, if you've been shopping, you're not going crazy, because I think this could give you some peace of mind that problem with the resale market to learn about an area, to try to shop an area, is that it is an uncontrollable dynamic. You assume that these sellers selling these homes are aware of all this information, but why would they be? You're listing your home in a neighborhood. How would you have a fantastic gauge of who's moving here necessarily, what you're really competing with? You know your own neighborhood. You're probably at the mercy of a single real estate agent, which also has its own issues because there's money derived from these sales. So depending on who the agent is, then there is an element in some capacity on every sale that is ego, ignorance, and greed. It has to be. So if people are benefiting in certain ways that wouldn't have benefited if it doesn't happen, they're giving you information based on that, and then you're also limited by what the person knows. So you got that, and you have sellers' personal feeling and their own financial situation. You have a person that's helping them sell that has that dynamic, and then you have buyers shopping that also have their own agent. You're talking like 3-4 individual people with not a consolidated database of information to assist them with making a decision that are affecting all the stuff. And you have that in a bunch of different parts of town and all these homes for sale. So because of that, you can't trend base like what these things maybe should cost, what's going to happen with them necessarily, because you're in a buyer leverage market against sellers who have their own needs. So I think if you're a buyer out of state right now, you're gonna continue probably to have leverage. I don't know if it gets worse or whatever you consider worse. I don't think we're gonna go all of a sudden to like some sort of seller leverage anytime soon. So I think you're gonna be able to come in and you're gonna be able to shop resales against new construction. You could know what new construction stuff's going to be built 8-9 months from now when you buy what is available now. And you can see a lot better idea of what Sarasota and Manatee County are to the state, because the more homes listed allow you at the zip code level to shop to look, at least have a reason to go in resale neighborhoods and see what they mean, where if there's zero inventory, you're almost at complete mercy of new construction to educate yourself about an area. So I think the more data that goes into your personal formula for making a decision is at the highest I have seen it in a long period of time. So that's why I thought point number 2 was interesting. Point number 3 is on the back of point number 2, and that buyers, I think, have more power than I expected. We all felt things creeping to, like, getting out of COVID, we felt things creeping to a more buyer-friendly market. Everybody was exhausted by what just happened, tired of getting taken for a ride. It was just fatigue. And so we felt it leaning that way. But to get to where we are today, that shortly removed from where we were, I don't know if many people predicted the gravity, beyond interest rates. I mean, the power of choice is in a place that it's never been. I mean, we know about new construction. I mean, it's not going to stop. Tons of inventory, like I just mentioned. You have tons of new construction. So more options that you don't feel like are going to go away gives you poise, and which is just good even if you want to buy now. The one thing that I didn't see coming as much is the exit of another state. So like one of the most interesting things that came out of that 2020 era was that some of the work from home dynamics, like it was one step before the one that everybody knows. Like you can work from home, they moved to like a paradise or whatever. It was the intra-city one. So like you're working downtown Chicago and you have a family and stuff, so you're like, well, I don't want to commute an hour and a half, or I'm never going to see my kids or something like that. So you're forced to kind of live around the city because you can't get too far. It gets too squirrely to get into the city. This is the same for many places, right? Well, then they say work from home. You could work from home and maybe permanently. So then you're like, oh, so this is my chance. I like to have a better quality of life. I'm not going to live in this little condo and overpay if I could not do that. Well, a lot of those people didn't move out of state. They have family and stuff they need to be close to. So they moved to their own suburb. So you go from downtown Chicago out to the suburb of that. That's not too far removed, but way better neighborhood, all this kind of stuff, more space. Well, the thing that happened there was then the people that were already in the suburbs, gold rush. Like a time when they had demand that maybe they should never have. People weren't targeting those suburbs for any other reason other than that weird dynamic. So those people took that money and ran. But it created a time where if they didn't do it then, I don't know when they would have been able to do it. So a lot of what happens in these states, it's even if you're excited about Florida, it's your ability to exit your own state in a meaningful way, right? Because if you can't do that, right, you don't have the money you need to do something here. So they're trying to time this whole thing. Well, most times in history that I've seen, people had to figure out the exit before they figured out the entrance. They're like, if I can sell this place, I'm getting out. And then I'll figure it out. Like I can't go buy this place because I don't know if this is going to sell on time. I don't know what I can get. I don't know what I'm going to be taxed. I don't know all these kind of things because all those other markets are driven by not retirement play first economics. The people end up there for work or some other fragile reason that is a lot harder to predict, in my opinion. Which this still surprises me a little bit. The amount of people I've been talking to that their market's going great, they're not nervous to sell. It's a really, really interesting dynamic. Like you're in North Carolina or one of these other areas, Georgia, or a myriad of different states. Most people we talk to, most states they're from, they're not nervous about selling at all if they're in the right neighborhood. So what it allows them to do is not have to jump and make a quick decision. So they have all these options in Florida, more than they've had in my real estate lifetime, but they don't have to figure it out in a pinch. They're not bordered by time because when they find the perfect opportunity and they beat down that builder to an incentive that we've never seen before, $125,000 off your house or a free pool or all that kind of stuff, then they're like, great, I'll sign that contract, then I'll sell my house because I know it's going to go in 45 days and I can close and I'll have no problem doing it. I think that creates a very different environment than if you had to choose, I got my money from here, great, but then I'm like faced with renting, or even if I want to build a house now, I have this interim thing. If you're moving cross country, you have a family or you just have a bunch of stuff, that is a royal pain. So the ability to sit back and sell your house when you like creates a way more functional way to use the very buyer-friendly environment that we already have in existence right now. All right, my fourth and final point for today's ramblings is I don't know if I thought Western Bradenton would ever become a thing. I don't know if I thought coastal Bradenton, Florida would ever happen for an out-of-state buyer. You have areas of any town, like same goes for coastal Bradenton, where, in Florida, some of the urban areas and the first areas that were popular and all of that are coastal, of course, because why would you go inland if you could do that first? Downtown Sarasota is no different. But you have offshoots of it. So Sarasota's major metro is anchored by, downtown Sarasota, which is 3.5 miles to the coast. You have bay in between barrier islands and the mainland. So you have the major downtown of the town in a play first, work second area that is 3.5 miles to Lido Key, bunch of shopping districts in between. Longboat Key's right there. You're 6 miles down to Siesta Key. So just magical magical, triangle of sorts of value. And then everything's created as bumps off of that because, you want new construction or you want a price you can't get there anymore, something like that. So that's how you start to go east. It's all created from that one idea, in my opinion. Then you say, okay, well, what if I want that similar vibe, but I can't afford that, or it just doesn't work? Then you have junior versions of that a lot of times. And if you go north of Sarasota 5-6 miles, that is our junior version. It is just as coastal. It has beaches that you can access, like Bradenton Beach, Coquina, Anna Maria Island, all of that. It is more urban-based housing. There's not consolidated master plan new construction, but it's just like kind of choppy. It doesn't really have an identity because like if you could choose downtown, you would, or if you could choose downtown Sarasota's urban district, you would. And if you can't, then you seek an alternative. And so like the values of the homes are, one, it's really old, right? So any historical district, for good or bad, so it depends where you lie in this topic, you can't control what everybody does. So because of that, people do whatever they want. So it's house to house, it's street to street. It's not as classy of an area that's matured where yes, that does exist, but in some sort of a little bit more controllable way, like a Hyde Park in Tampa, Laurel Park, Burns Court, the more uppity versions of that. So coastal Bradenton, if you just visited town randomly, on a map, you're like, unbelievable. But then you're like, why are the prices like this? And you go visit, you're like, it'd be hard to sink $1.2 million down because the house next to you could be like basically in existence because they're paying their taxes, but it's decrepit. There's no like shared amenities. There's very difficult to gauge what it should be and if it'll ever be a thing. And if you're out of state and you have no biases, which are good, then it's a lot easier to do a Lakewood Ranch or a Welland Park or something like that because it looks like it does online. However, up until this point, that has been my opinion, and I don't have any of those like, I grew up here and I feel pretentious and like, I wouldn't live in Western Bradenton. I don't have any of that. I like all of it. This is what happens when people see it. What people that think they love it and they come here, this is what happens. And they've tested new construction options like Aqua, and I mean, you have IMG Academy, like a really high-end like sports/school, Bolletary Academy, like tennis, baseball, they're massive, very expensive. A lot of people from out of country go there just for those reasons in that area. And they've done some new construction snippets around it, but it just never really took off because I think people couldn't get their head around it. Then lands a master plan development called Seaflower. This is the best example of what could happen here. It's for good or bad. Again, like not everybody loves you coming and platting all their stuff that they've loved, the history and keeping that intact. But for an out-of-state buyer, this opens up geographies that I don't know if you would have been open to previously. So there's a defunct flower farm very close to the coast. You're talking like 3.5 miles one way to the beaches. It's those beaches, you gotta want that, but 3.5 miles one way to the beaches, multiple ways to get there. And what they did is they didn't build just one neighborhood like Aqua did. They have a bunch of different builders coming together around communal amenities and communal commercial districts that's big enough to insulate basically an entire area. It's like almost like a big square. You have 200,000 plus square feet of commercial space going in. There's gonna be restaurants, there's gonna be shops, there's gonna be a grocery store, like parts of Lakewood Ranch have. There's like a town square where you're gonna have farmers markets, walkability, golf cartability. You have builders like David Weekley, Cardell, Pulte. You have some custom elements with like ISA, and all of that where it allows you to shop it holistically. And to say, if you had that same opinion, even if you were really biased about that opinion, like if you thought Lakewood Ranch was awesome and this was trash before, for instance, then how much does it matter if they build your entire mini town in that area and drop it there? What was already there matter as much, right? Because all of your home values, if you're like on the financial side, are gonna be controlled by what your neighbors built. Like it's gonna be completely comped by its own development that they're planning in advance. And it's being done by people that have done this many, many times. Go to all these other areas. It's the same 5-6 builders in all these areas. So I think it's incredibly interesting to drop area like this, like Babcock Ranch, like places that you would never live in unless they created a turnkey environment. And then you drop that on the coast and you say, oh, now, I mean, the bay's right there. I have world-class beaches. I can still shoot over to the suburbs, enjoy all that. But this isn't like a choice, like one little tiny beach house that's like, it's lovely, but once I get there, I'm there and I got nothing else. So anyway, I just want to introduce that concept. It's a holistic idea that I think will cascade throughout the state of Florida. But if there are opportunities like this, like a farm that they're not going to use for farming reasons anymore, or something like this opens up, then you could access an amount of land to do intentional master plan development, where land is usually your issue, right? Because they can't build these things on the coast because it's already built. Then an out-of-state buyer, I think, for out-of-state buyers, this could create a much more affordable, less awkward way to access our wonderful coast. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's edition of the Florida Relocation Guide on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel if you've not already done so. Ton of great content planned for the balance of the year. Going to try to give as much value as humanly possible. There's a lot of interesting things that are like on the horizon of release. So I think if there was any time to try to keep a beat on the market, it probably is Q3 to Q4 in the Sarasota-Manatee County area right now, at least in recent history. Subscribing is the best way to get involved in all that kind of stuff. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if my team and I can assist you in any way with your real estate needs, whether that is now, that is 3 years from now, please consider reaching out. I think trying to make plans from out of state, an early conversation can really make research more efficient. Just basically, if you're running down rabbit holes, make sure that you're in the right hole. So if you're 2 years away, don't feel bad about contacting us. That's all we're doing all day. We're talking with people that have just done what you're trying to do now already for the last 4 or 5 years. You can call, text, email, all that kind of thing if you see it fit. Beyond that, my main hub is called the sunshinestateco.com. Relocation guides you can download or view on your browser. We have written word versions of the videos. Everything that's come out in the last 2-3 weeks before this video onward has an audio only version that's in the description box of YouTube. You can actually subscribe to that podcast. I think it's on all the major platforms, but I just kind of use the linking system. But you can subscribe to that podcast if you want to see, I think a day or two after the videos come out, I sync that system. So I really like the audio quality is really high, but it allows you, if you don't have YouTube Premium and you're in the car or something like that, it's much more user friendly as far as the versatility at which you can listen on a podcast kind of platform. So, if I have a screen share or something I did in the video, you gotta take it with a grain of salt because you can't see it, but I like the audio experience personally. We have a 30-day email, which I'm flirting with doing the email twice a month, just so one, it's not as insane at the end of the month, but also just so you don't have to wait that long. Or if you sign up on August 3rd, then you have the full rest of the month before you get any information. So I'm thinking about doing a mid-month and an end of month, almost like a half and then a full. So not two halves, but an aggregation towards the end of the month. So that email list is on the link for all the videos. That link is there where you can sign up. If you download anything, you'll typically be on the next loop of it. You can reach out at any time and ask for the previous 1 or 2 emails too. We have them all archived, so you can do that. But I think that's a really useful resource. It is the most bite-sized, it is the most consolidated of everything going on that is not as random as finding a video that you're watching right here. That YouTube recommends stuff wildly a lot of times. It's trying to go off of interest. So it could recommend something I made a year ago. So if you're trying to almost episodically see what's going on with the market and you're trying to make decisions, then the newsletter is a really great way because it's on just a loop. It's 30-day and it doesn't really expire, but you can talk about things there that you can't do elsewhere. We are adding back the listings we have, some off-market stuff that I haven't put on there in a while that we are speaking to people about that want to list that might not list their home until October, stuff like that. We're throwing on there just to see if it piques anyone's curiosity. So that's a good thing to do as well. I think that covers it. Thank you guys so much for consuming any of my content. We'll see you on the next one.